So we're just, thanks, Julia. So first of all, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. We are recording the session and you can enable captions and there is an access copy of the slides that maybe we can repost again, Julia, for any adjoining folks, sorry. And I would like to begin, and I apologize, this is, 1 second. Okay, I would like to begin by acknowledging that CWCA ACCR is made up of members from writing centres across this place known today as Canada, called Turtle Island by some Indigenous peoples and stretching across the original lands of First Nations, Inuit and later Métis Nations. I am a white settler immigrant and I'm joining you from the territories of the Anishinaabeg, the Attawandaron and the Haudenosaunee peoples. The Haldimand Tract is part of that territory and it includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River, and that was granted to 6 nations of Haudenosaunee people of 6 nations in 1784 by the Haldimand Treaty. And that is where I'm right now. It's where the University of Waterloo sits. And I invite you all to take a moment to consider the land that you're on, the Indigenous nations who lived on it and were stewards of the land before settler occupation and colonization. I also invite you to consider the role of your writing centre in either extending colonization or mitigating its impacts, and to look to the teachings of local Indigenous nations and nations across this place we call Canada in indigenizing your pedagogy, including use of AI technologies. And I think that's an important thing, an important lens to look at the decision making we do in our writing centres through. So as you're thinking about ChatGPT and other AI, think about in what ways it aligns with or is maybe in opposition to the Indigenous pedagogies that are in use in your writing centre and your institutions. And perhaps bring this lens and these reflections to our discussion today if you feel able to and prepared. I also just want to point out that CWCA ACCR does have a statement of commitment to anti-racism, and it forms sort of the centerpiece of the action that we do in countering the harms of racism and colonization in our work and in writing centres as well. So welcome everyone. If you haven't already done so, please do introduce yourselves in the chat. My name is Clare Bermingham. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. I'm the director of the Writing and Communication Centre at the University of Waterloo. I'd like to introduce my co-facilitators, co-organizers today. Brian Hotson from Dalhousie, previously of St. Mary's, Senior Manager Program and Impact Evaluation at Dalhousie University. Michael Cournoyea, actually I don't, Michael, can you tell me how to pronounce your name? I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's quite all right. Cournoyea is perfect.
Thank you. Who is an instructor in health sciences at the University of Toronto, and Zoe Mukura, who is a language instructor at Saskatchewan Polytechnic. And thank you all so much for volunteering your time today and all the way up to this meeting. And finally, Julia Lane, who is Writing Services Coordinator, at Student Learning Commons at SFU, who has been our technical support and my Zoom hero, and will be moderating our chat today. And if you missed the beginning of the session, if you need anything, if you'd like to have something shared that you're not feeling comfortable putting in the chat personally, you can always direct message Julia and she can help you out with that. Okay, so this is our agenda today. We are going to take a few minutes just to jump into some information about ChatGPT and a little bit about Canadian institutions, and then we'll get into the breakout topics and into our breakout sessions. So the agenda is that we will chat in a larger group for a short period of time, and then we will have 2 breakout sessions. And after that, we'll come back into the large group and have a share back. Before we begin, just a couple of words. Quica ACCR has talked about, and this came in a number of questions from registrants today, has talked about creating a statement about ChatGPT and other similar AI, sort of a position statement that would help guide writing centers across the country. And what we felt when we discussed it was that we needed to get a bit more information, that we wanted to understand what your perspectives were, what the perspectives of your institution are, and sort of what you're feeling and thinking and reflecting on as this technology develops very, very quickly. Writing centers are diverse. There are learning centers in some cases. Sometimes they advise faculty and instructors, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're paired with numeracy and other sort of subject tutoring, and sometimes they're not. So we wanted to make sure that we're incorporating all of your all of that diversity and all of your perspectives. Yes, thank you. I think that's everything, all of the business for today. So I'm going to pass this over to Brian, who can take us into a discussion of ChatGPT.
Thanks, Claire, and thanks everyone for coming today. It's really great to see so many people, so many familiar names and new names as well. It's always great for us to get together as a community. So what I want to do today is present, kind of give an overview of what ChatGPT is. I'm not necessarily an expert on it. I've just done a lot of reading and sort of delved into this. I was working on a project at Dalhousie on academic integrity, and when this thing popped up, so I was asked to do research into it. So I'll just share to you what I have and what I know. So ChatGPT is a large language model. You'll hear this term LLMs being passed around, and that's a more accurate term than ChatGPT is the idea of an LLM. So essentially, here's some points here that I think are most important to know about the LLMs like ChatGPT. And I'm going to use the term ChatGPT just so that we keep it straight. So it's an artificial intelligence system. So it's working in using a large amount of data. So artificial intelligence, if you're not aware of that, I'm not going to go too far into that, but you might want to take a close look at that. There's lots of good examples on the old internet. So the thing that makes ChatGPT interesting and very useful and also dangerous is that it generates natural language text. So instead of, if you're using it as a search engine, for example, you ask it questions. And for those of you who have limited experience or not used it yet, you can carry on a conversation with ChatGPT. It understands your questions, and you can ask it follow-up questions. And it answers you in sentences, and it appears to be, for all intents and purposes, like a human. And when I use it, sometimes I find myself writing thanks in the when it answers one of my questions, and it says, "You're welcome." So it's trained on a large database, a large data set. So these LLMs have been around for a very, very long time. In 2016, the Washington Post was using bots like these large language models to, I think they wrote, bots wrote over 600 articles in the Washington Post for using an LLM in 2016. So they've been around for a while. ChatGPT, they have not revealed the large database that they're using, which is problematic, obviously. Some people think that they're using the entire internet and whatever it is that they can access. And that includes things like, every blog post you've ever made on, recipes and chat or, tweets that you've made. Everything that's on the internet, it can access. So that's one of the things that people are concerned about. It uses a very complex algorithm to learn patterns and structures of language. So basically what it does, it anticipates what it is that you are going to type. And so as you're asking a question, it anticipates what the next word in your question will be, and then finds that question, the answer to that question, or the answer to that word. It's a very interesting process. And again, if you're interested in looking at that from a tech perspective, it's quite fascinating. So it's designed to perform a variety of natural language processes, answering questions, summarizing text and text completions. I've used it to alphabetize and format an APA reference. So it saved me literally hours, and it did it in, 45 seconds or a minute. It can generate coherent and fluid text. So it can even mimic writing styles. And so I know that from just chats online, that authors have asked it to write stories in their own style. Or it can ask you to write an article, say, on a lab report in the style of Scientific American. And if you might have recalled, the Guardian actually had to post or write a piece because some people were using ChatGPT to create articles in the style of the Guardian and attributing it to them as well. So one of the things too about it is that, as we talked about, the large amount of text, but the thing to remember is that it's using text written by humans, obviously, and as a result, it responds in human-like ways. So when you ask it questions, feeling questions, opinions, it will give you the opinions of other human beings. It'll give you the feelings of other human beings, which may not necessarily be correct, or the kinds of feelings that you want to have responded to. So there's an excellent example of this from the podcast Hard Fork on the New York Times, where using the beta version of Bing's LLM, one of the podcasters there, he got into a discussion with the Bing version, and it expressed its love for him and told him that he should leave his girlfriend. So quite bizarre in that regard. Just go to the next slide, please. So I like to, and you all have access to this. So I like to ask ChatGPT every time I do a presentation on this, what is ChatGPT? And this actually was surprising because it answered me in the first person, which was the first time that it has done that. So I will leave this to you. I think that for us as writing experts, the second last sentence is really interesting. So you can use that. Okay, next slide. So a thing to remember too is that ChatGPT is to LLMs as Band-Aid is to bandages. So it's a brand name. And these are some other things that you want to learn. Those are some linked terms that I think are important for you to know. And then to know that the free version is version 3.5. So if we go to the next slide, we look at the sort of process of a ChatGPT. The first version of ChatGPT was produced in 2019 using these parameters. So it's important to understand this idea of parameters. It works like a neural network similar to your brain. So the greater number of the parameters, the better the LLM is at handling complex language. So we go to the next slide. You can see here that the 2018 version of ChatGPT had 117 million parameters. So that's basically like synapses in your brain. The next version was 1.5 billion. We move on to the next, ChatGPT 3, which is the version that we're using now, the free version, its factors larger. So 170 billion. So for a reference, if you can wrap your brain around it, there's 100 billion stars in the Milky Way. So it's a lot. And then on the next version, the version that is the paid version, if you go to the next slide, you can see the ChatGPT 4, which is if you go to the next slide as well, Claire, you can see just how much bigger it is. So we're looking at between 175 billion to 1 trillion synapses, and the human brain is 100 trillion. There are some scientists, and in the literature, it says that perhaps ChatGPT 4 has 100 trillion parameters. But if we consider the Moore's law, which in 1965 said that the number of transistors on a chip doubles about every 2 years, we probably will be there very shortly. So I'll pass it along. So you know, these, if you want to make sure, take a look at these slides. And here I've put up what the LLM is not. So I think that one of the most important things for us, and I'll just end on this, is that sometimes ChatGPT fabricates, or as OpenAI and ChatGPT call it, hallucinates facts and citations and makes errors in reasoning. I found this to be quite prevalent, and this is something that my son, who's in high school, a lot of his classmates are using ChatGPT to write their essays and so on, and they're finding that it hallucinates quite often. So I'll pass it back to you, Claire.
Thanks, Brian. And I'm going to pass it over to Zoe.
Okay, thank you. And that was a very interesting introduction into the topic I'm going to talk about. And I think I'll just segue into the fact that the ChatGPT has a lot of characteristics, and interestingly, the hallucination, I think, is one of the things that can frighten us away from it. There have been some interesting reactions. Some people have embraced it, some have buried their heads in the sand, and others are treading cautiously. So looking at worldwide, the global village, we noticed that some schools in Australia and the US have blocked it via firewall. So at a macro level, schools, colleges, universities are reacting. And we also noticed that universities, this is now moving on to the meso level, and then countries are banning it as well, China, Iran, Italy. So reactions have been very interesting and very diverse, and they are informed by different reasons. So today, I think, as we discuss, we as a group will also start formulating what we think is the best practice. So we're not just going to blanketly join the chorus of saying, let's ban it. I think it's good for us to discuss and to come up with ideas. So one of the questions that arises is, should Canadian universities integrate LLM AI into mainstream programming? Some universities have done this. And is it good? Is it bad? And then the other questions that will arise, is it necessary to have a united policy like these countries, China, Italy? Is it necessary for us as institutions to have a global policy that's used by all instructors? Or is it okay to just have each instructor make their own decisions and inform their students? So the best responses to these and other questions, as I said earlier, will arise, and as we come to learn more and more about these tools. Next slide, please. Right, so Canadian institutions, this is a survey that was done in 2018. We had 223 public and private universities, 213 colleges and institutions, and post-secondary education falls under the jurisdiction of provincial governments and territories. But if we wait for them to come up with a concerted decision as to what we are going to do, it will not happen. Why is this? It's largely because of the rapidity of the developments that we are seeing, and also the governing bodies limit their involvement to seeing that services are made accessible to people, and they don't get involved in what they consider to be pedagogical issues. And the question that we then ask is this purely a pedagogical issue? But answers to these questions will come as we discuss, and we look forward to hearing a lot of diverse inputs. And Canadian institutions of higher learning have reacted in very different ways as well. And we'll look at just a brief outline of what some of them have done, but it's basically firefighting at this stage. We're just plugging holes as they appear. Next slide, please. So this is a curation of a list of reactions from a wide range of institutions of higher learning. And thanks to Claire, who put together a document, and I added a little bit to it. And you will find the document linked. It's a Google Doc that you can link and see just as a starting point. You can also just investigate and see what other institutions are doing. So one of the things that we've seen is that some institutions are not responding in any official way. They are they're silent on it. They're keeping mum. And we hear a lot of whisperings in the corridors. Faculty are just discussing amongst themselves, and it's almost a taboo topic. And in some institutions, the focus is on the limitations, the bad stuff, the limitations, and they are cautioning people, ownership of output, reliability, and they're focusing on a reliability of detectors. We have detectors like Turnitin, similar to Turnitin, that have already been developed. And amusingly enough, ChatGPT will actually, if you ask, how can I get around these detectors, it will give you means to get around it. So this is how some institutions are reacting to it. They're policing. Others are, there's no information on pedagogy and assignment design or how to incorporate it. And some are actually giving principles or guidelines of usage. And then some are providing teaching sheets for instructors to use as guidelines and what outcomes they can look at that will help students to think critically, because that's, I think that what we're looking at is one of the concerns is, what does this do to the critical thinking, and why are we asking students to write? What are we looking for? So some institutions are giving tips and ways of just incorporating that critical thinking into the assignments in a way that whether they use AI or not, they will still be forced to think critically. So, and then other institutions have detailed frequently asked questions. They have blogs, and they've curated frequently asked questions, and they've put together responses and teaching tips with guidance. I think I've mentioned this earlier, to students as well as to instructors. So providing teaching tips to faculty, learning hubs. So there's a variety of reactions. And I think the biggest group of responses we've seen is caution. I think people are saying, let's learn more about it before we do anything about it. Next slide, please. And so in creating forums for dialogue and exploration of the future of writing and teaching, I think we will find what we are looking for, the balance that we need, and the best practices. So although these responses are broad and I've generalized them and left out a lot of details, the institutions we personally, all of us who are part of this platform today, the institutions we are affiliated to may have reacted in one of or two of those ways that we've talked about, but we hope to hear from you as we formulate best practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. And I'm going to pass it over to Michael now.
Thanks so much, Claire, Zoe, and Brian. So I'm just going to walk quickly through some of the questions that we had discussed for the breakout rooms to inspire dialogue. These questions come from those that were contributed for this particular forum, discussions that we've had at our respective institutions, and also they came up from discussions that the four of us had in preparing for today. If you could move to the first one, thank you. So the 5 discussion topics, the breakout topics, are with regard to writing centers, classrooms, language learners, graduate students, and academic integrity. So let me quickly walk through each of these 5. We're going to have breakout rooms for each of these different topics, and you're going to have a chance to move into at least 2 of these rooms before we all come together as a group. So with regard to student support in the Writing Center in particular, we wanted to engage with questions about how we might help learners with the writing process, whether they have to use AI or they're not allowed to use AI. What does that mean for both workshops and one-on-one consultations? How we can help prepare students as they leave our institutions where they might be required to use AI. How can we keep up with the incredible pace of advancements of these technologies, and to keep ourselves abreast of the new developments and pass it on to students. And of course, the limitations of AI writing tools and how we can communicate that best to students, both in terms of its regurgitation of what's on the internet, as Brian had mentioned, linguistic whitewashing, which I'm sure many of us are aware of, the biases of these tools, and of course, privacy concerns. For each of these topics, which will be available to you, the slides will be, we've written very brief scenarios in case that might be helpful for the discussion. The first one here is with regard to an undergraduate student that comes to a writing center for a consultation, and it has what I've called the hallmarks of an AI text generator: repetitive phrases, unnatural transitions, uncanny flatness. How do you actually broach the topic of whether an AI was used to generate some part of this paper? Thanks, Claire. We can move to the next one. The next regards the classroom. So how can we best advise instructors whether they should, or if they want to, how they can integrate these AI tools into their own pedagogy, or perhaps our own, and how assignments can still showcase a student's originality if they are using these tools. You might consider in this discussion how these tools might work with learning outcomes, if there's a spectrum in which we can integrate AI into our classrooms, either fully embracing it, integrating it in small bits, or completely trying to get rid of it in our classrooms. The radical idea that evaluations outside the classroom, that is anything that is not done actually in the classroom, are no longer viable. And whether these writing tools can reduce accessibility, but at the same time somehow even the playing field. And the scenario here is about an undergraduate biology instructor who may come to you with an assignment that they've done many times, but it could be undermined by AI because it's something that students might easily plop into ChatGPT, and so they want to remove some of this concern. Thanks, Claire. The next regards language learners, which in some ways might be really benefited by having AI tools. We talked a bit about ChatGPT, and Brian has told you that this is a brand name. DeepL is another AI tool, which is particular to translation, and in many ways it has surpassed Google Translate. And I know that many language learners at the University of Toronto are using this kind of tool. Can these tools be integrated into language learning consultations or curricula? And how might the limitations of AI tools, linguistic monotony, right? Not having a diversity of corpora with which it's trained, undermine the fact that it can be a tool that can be used for language learning. And the scenario here is with regard to a graduate student who's multilingual, who might be using a tool like this, and how we might be able to advise them. The fourth topic is specific to graduate students and their concerns. And I should probably have put the last question first, which is how are they different from undergraduate students, and what concerns might they have that are unique? So is there a place for AI with regard to classic graduate student assignments and stages, comprehensives, thesis proposals, or even their dissertations? How can they integrate them into scholarly publications or be using these tools, or should they at all? And interestingly, what should we advise graduate students when their supervisors require them to use AI tools for lit reviews, to summarize their own texts into abstracts, or for things that we can't yet predict. And this scenario here is with regard to that. Sorry. Thank you. And the final topic is, I think, perhaps a topic that we've heard the most about, which is academic integrity and what these tools might mean for the future of writing. And so, do writing centers and staff have a role in informing both pedagogy and policing with regard to these tools? And how can we also help to inform what should be done with new AI detectors? I read that Turnitin thinks with a great amount of accuracy that they'll be able to catch the use of AI, but these are still indeterministic. We still have to worry about false positives in ways that are unique to AI that we didn't have to quite worry about with regard to other forms of plagiarism. And we just might not know the reliability of these tools. When students are using these tools, how might they cite them and how should they cite them? We talked about a spectrum of collaboration with these tools. Students can be using them just for idea generation or to find sources, but they might be using them to actually write blocks of text. And citations might take different forms depending on how much they're using them. And perhaps finally, this last question here is about moving beyond plagiarism and the idea that we are going to be using these tools so much more that the future of writing might change. And I'm just going to read this last scenario because I think it is so interesting. In conversation with other instructors, you've heard that many of your colleagues are defaulting to suspicion, which I've heard from my colleagues. They find themselves searching for traces of AI in every student paper that they read. How might you encourage productive dialogue among your colleagues about this affective dimension of student AI collaboration? So these are the breakout topics. They are available to everyone through the slides. And I think Claire now is going to talk us through how the breakout rooms are going to work and how they're going to be divided. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, so we're going to move into the breakout group part of the meeting. So we will have 2 rounds of breakout groups, and they'll be about 20 minutes each, and the topics will repeat in each round. Initially, we had sort of had 2 groups of on each topic, but we've changed that a little bit. So we're going to have 3 groups on student support in the Writing Center, 1 group on student support in the classroom, 2 groups on supporting language learning, 1 group on supporting grad students, and 2 groups on academic integrity and the future of writing. I want to give a huge shout out to our moderator volunteers. And just say thank you so much to them for volunteering to help facilitate these conversations. Moderators, you have the list of which group you're facilitating that I sent you by email, but certainly message me if you're not sure where you're supposed to be and I can direct you. And in fact, you don't need to because I forgot I put this right here. So our round of moderators are listed here. So please take note of which group that you're attached to. What we've also done is we've created a document, a Google document that you can use to take notes in your groups. Use this link, which is going into the chat, and we'll go into the chat in your individual groups as well, to take notes. And don't worry if it gets messy, we'll figure all that out. And we'll have a new document, a fresh document for round 2. If you can talk about, who may be a note taker in your group or how you want to do that, that would be great. And just be prepared to share some of that back. I think that's it. When I release these groups, just I think you can monitor the numbers of people in the groups and just kind of keep an eye on those numbers and try and spread yourselves out as much as possible. And we do have an extra room if we need to open another room to keep the numbers in the small groups at a productive level. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And you should be able to join them on your own.
I'm just going to go hop into each of the rooms and paste those links. So I'll be on for a little bit.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Lucy, to answer your question, where do we know which breakout room talks about what? The names of the groups should be in there. So A, B, and C for writing centers. And then Brian is facilitating A, Sarah B, C is Johanna. Let me know if you're not sure. You can turn your mic on if that's easier. You kill Jenna?
What's that?
Are you okay?
Yeah, just wondering, I'm actually, were we automatically put into these groups or
No, you get to pick.
Okay, and where am I? Sorry, how do I enter the room?
Did something not come up with the breakout rooms for you?
No.
Okay, I think I can.
I'm like seeing
Okay.
everyone leave
That's
and I'm
okay.
like,
Where would you like to go? What do you want to go to?
I would love to go to Academic Integrity Future with Jillian Saunders.
Okay, academic integrity. Okay, let me figure out how to assign
Or
to.
with Brian, either is fine.
I'll put you in
Open
the
it
one
up.
that only has two people right now.
Okay.
Well, I don't know where that went. Let me try that again.
Awesome. Thank you, Claire.
Okay, no problem. Jenna, you're back.
Back. There was one person, and so there's a recommendation to pop into another room.
Okay, so I will put you into the other academic integrity ones.
Sure. Or Writing Center A, B, or C. Any of those are fine as well.
Okay.
You're wonderful. Thank you.
No, that's okay. I just gotta find you because you're not in here anymore. So let me just check. Oh, there you go. Okay, move to. There you go.
Thank you.
Hey,
Hi.
how can I help?
I am just so I pasted the things. So which one would you like me to put for Writing Center C and classroom and graduate support? Because they say A and B. They say breakout group session A, great breakout group session B.
What does the document?
The Google Doc note docs.
Oh, they can just create a new one. We can just pop it in there. It should like the whole, did I not? Hang on a second. All right, every time I go to do something, it splits off. Let me just look and see here.
Yeah, because I think I only have 2 different Google Docs for notes. Unless I'm missing.
Yeah, so one is for this round of folks and one is for the next round. Oh, I see. You were looking at 8. Sorry, those were the rounds. So
Oh,
everyone gets to participate in the first document and then everyone gets to participate in the second document.
Okay, I may have messed that up.
That's okay. It's all good. It doesn't matter.
So-
We're gonna bring it all together anyway.
Okay,
So
yeah,
as long
sorry.
as-
So I was giving folks A and B.
Gotcha. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, that's
No,
my
I should have
bad
double checked
enumeration.
that. Okay, well, what I can do is after this first round, I'll just move anything that's in B, I'll move it over to A,
Okay.
and then we can restart in B. Does that
Okay.
sound okay?
Yeah, and then in the meantime, just have something that they can we just,
Well, I pasted it, but they may not know. So I'll just I'll go back into those rooms and give them A.
okay, amazing. Thanks,
Because
Julia.
they may not, because I was clearly confused.
No, it's okay.
I was like, because I wasn't listening to your instructions very well because I was trying to organize everything. That's the problem. Okay.
It's all good.
All right. I will pop into those other rooms. I will be back.
No worries. Thank you. Okay, I think we're all back. Yeah. I know some folks had to leave. Hi, everyone. Sorry about the unanticipated confusion with that second round of breakout rooms. We didn't realize how that would work, and now we know, and we know for next time how it works. So lessons are being learned all the time. Someone posted a link in the academic integrity group right as we were getting kicked out. Can that person post it here? That would be super helpful. Thanks for that, Toby. Okay, well, welcome back. I hope those were good discussions. We have about 15 minutes left. We have gone a little past time, but I know that those breakout room discussions are so important. I would love if facilitators or whoever you kind of had tapped on the shoulder to report back could do a quick kind of pop your mic on and share a highlight and a takeaway. And if we can just do that like super quick and like 20 seconds instead of 30 seconds, that would be amazing. So I'm going to shut up and just call on folks who are in the student support in the Writing Center groups.
Maybe if we could use hand raising as a way to prioritize who's going to speak, if that's okay.
Sure, that would be great. Thanks, Michael.
And I'm going to take that opportunity to go first before any hands are raised. So Anne and I had a really good discussion about student supports in writing centers. And one lesson that we took from that conversation is developing a standardized question to ask all students that come into the writing center about whether they received any support, whether human or non-human, on the piece of writing that we might be looking at. And that question helps to destigmatize those kinds of questions and broach the issue. Thanks.
Oh, I love that, Michael. Thank you. Thanks for starting us off. Joanna, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I was in student support in the Writing Center C, and we had quite a big group. So I don't know if we reached a total consensus on anything really, but we found there were different approaches at different institutions. And so some folks have been told not to approach this at all, and others are sort of feeling it out case by case basis. But I think some of the interesting things around support that came up, especially towards the end of our conversation, were the sort of advantages and disadvantages, like making students aware of the options and the pitfalls, but that some of these tools might be really useful in a cognitive kind of offloading piece, not as a substitute for thinking, but to take some of the sort of more tedious tasks of the writing process and sort of support things like restructuring and reorganizing and those kinds of questions. So an exciting thing to think about.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Jana.
Nice. So our group talked about first of all, like using Quillbot as a tool for simplifying language and making academic reading more accessible, and ChatGPT as a conversation.
Did we lose you?
Diana, you're muted, I think, somehow.
Yeah, it says I got muted. Okay. ChatGPT is a conversational partner for language learning. And then we were questioning, like, how is this different from other tools like Grammarly, and how is our approach going to change with time, especially because we've all noticed the reactionary, like, no, absolutely not. I've been getting emails from like my in-laws about like, oh, like horrible AI is here. It's like, well, I don't think we're at risk of becoming redundant and losing our jobs anytime soon. I think we're probably good. And so we were talking about just asking how the tool is helping the student toward their goal, like what their goal is. And Marcy had been mentioning about student ability and how often it comes from a place of insecurity where they're like, well, you know, I can probably do better than I can. And I was thinking about maybe even the face saving aspect of like, even if it does poorly, at least I didn't do poorly, the AI did poorly, right? And so And then we had AI tools value a particular kind of language in imitation of academia. And will this change our approach to what kind of language we value and support in academia, enhance linguistic diversity, etc.? Because we were talking about how often talking about tone, and I'm sorry, I forget who was saying this, but tone and that sort of thing is really code for like you speak as though this isn't your first language. And then encouraging to hear students' thoughts on their own writing, especially because so many have been told that they're not good at writing. And how can we support their ownership and agency so that they really can use these as tools, but not feel like they're inadequate without them?
That's great.
I hope I got everything.
That's wonderful. Yeah, yeah. Was that the language learning group, Jana?
Yes.
Awesome. That's great. No worries. Yeah, that's awesome. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Any more reports back on the writing center groups? And if not, we can just jump into any of the other ones. Please, yeah, put your hand up and let's get this conversation going. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Nadine.
So we had some really interesting conversations in the supporting grad students session, boiling down to the idea of intellectual property. So, it might be efficient to have somebody put their journal article draft or their conference paper into ChatGPT and have it spit out an abstract. And I don't know that pedagogically that's a bad thing if you take the time to then reflect on how it's put it together to learn about the genre of the abstract. But then ChatGPT has all of your information, and in a world of patents and competitiveness around ideas, I think we want to be careful to warn grad students about what they are potentially giving up when they do that. And then we also had really good conversations about the power dynamics around supervision and how that often it's the faculty we need to be talking to when it comes to the decisions grad students are making, because they may not actually have a choice if a supervisor says do or don't use ChatGPT.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Nadine. And then how do we have those conversations with the students and what rights do they have, right? It's very interesting. There was another hand up, but now it's gone. So I apologize. I don't know if I missed someone there. I think Lucy. Oh, Nancy. Hi.
So much. It might have been Lucy, actually.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I thought it was Lucy.
Yeah, and I just thought we could follow on the grad student theme. Teresa Bell and I had the pleasure of chatting. One of the key points I think that Teresa raised is this role that we can play as Writing Center staff to support grad students in coming up with the questions to ask committees and supervisors, because it is so difficult to navigate and complex.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Nancy. Is Lucy still here? Is Lucy still in the session? Oh, great. Wonderful. Thanks, Lucy. Did you have a hand up?
Well, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the academic integrity group.
Please.
So we talked a little bit about how we cannot have one big umbrella regulation for everybody, because every prof, every course, every program is going to be different and have different opportunities and different acceptance level of the thing, and fears also. But we make this at our university, we make the profs responsible to define extremely clearly what they allow for each assignment, and to have those discussions with the students, and maybe even come to an agreement with the students on when they can use it and when they can't, because the more engaged the students, the less likely they will be to cheat if they feel like they have a stake into the discussion. And also that, so if the students don't follow the prof's instructions, then they get in trouble with, the Academic Integrity Office. But it's impossible to say, use it for this or don't use it for that, or use it when at the whole university level, because that is just going to make everybody mad and it's not going to work out. And also we suggest that people have a full-time AI officer at their university, because this thing is going so quickly and it's so hard to keep track of every new development and to understand the impacts on everything, on all the aspects of AI, as I think somebody was saying about the visual aspects, the coding aspects, the mathematical aspect, like every different thing is going to be impacted, every field. So we need to have one person who stays on top of this and who is kind of providing workshops for faculty development, students development, maybe going to classes to talk to the students about it, to have those discussions, and also to be the point of contact when people have questions. And it's not academic integrity, it's come with your questions before you get in trouble, for faculty members and for students. So we need that one person on campus to be responsible for that. That was some of the things we discussed in our group.
Yeah, so great, so great. So really thinking about it at the local level and making sure that there's, you know, I love the you know, come with your questions, right? Because it's so new for everyone and it's changing all the time. And so to have folks on campus who can answer those questions. We have about 4 minutes left in this whole session today, in this whole forum. And so, you know, at this point, like, if anyone wants to jump in with a thought or a question or a response to anyone else, or something that maybe hasn't been brought up yet, that would be wonderful.
So can I say something?
Absolutely, Lucy. Yeah.
I think earlier in the chat, I shared a video and it's from Grammarly. So my group as a university, I chaired a committee, and one of the suggestions we made to profs is that they would allow students to use Grammarly because they've used it in the past. And we thought, you know, this is just to check your grammar, make sure that your sentences are okay. But now Grammarly Go has come out just a couple of days ago, and it's integrating the AI way, like in a very smooth way, that it's almost impossible now to distinguish from just grammar things. So I'll just, if you want to watch that video, you're going to be scared, because that thing is now so well integrated that it's hard to tell students when and how and where they can or cannot do things. So it's just one of the things. Copilot with Microsoft Word is coming out too, and it's going to be the same thing. If you don't want students to use AI, then they cannot use Grammarly and they cannot use Microsoft Word. So it's going to become very interesting to make those regulations.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a wonderful thought. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think there's so much happening. I think that's where the future of writing piece comes in, right? Is where are things going, and what will writing look like in the future, and how do we prepare ourselves and our students for that? Okay. Anyone else, any last thoughts? It's such a quick conversation. I'm so sorry. So much to think about. Okay. Well, I'm going to just take this opportunity then to say thank you to all of you for joining us today. We do have, we will be making the recording available, and we do have all of these wonderful brainstorm notes that we will be pulling together and sharing as part of the recording of today's session. There are lots and lots of references in the PowerPoint or slides notes. So please feel free to go through those. And I wanted to remind everyone that there are, of course, lots of conversations happening in the blog, and also that we'll be talking, I'm sure, more about this at the CWCA conference. And yeah, just again, thank you so much for joining us. I think we may need to keep having opportunities to connect with each other about these important topics. So thank you.